Welcome to Threads of Truth, the podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today, we explore a chilling image that has haunted America for decades.
It's a case that really sticks with you, mainly because of that one single photograph.
Exactly. I'm talking about that central, deeply disturbing image, a color Polaroid. It was found in a parking lot showing a young woman and a boy, their eyes wide with what looks like fear, gagged with black duct tape, and they seem to be bound in the back of a van, a windowless one.
Yeah, it's an incredibly haunting image. And for an investigation that really started with just fragments of a cassette tape found on a pretty lonely stretch of New Mexico highway, well, that photograph was a seismic shift. It instantly turned what was, a regional missing persons case into this national heartbreaking mystery.
So the big question for us today, as we kind of walk through this story, is pretty straightforward. Could the single photograph possibly hold the answer to the 1988 disappearance of Tara Calico? Was it maybe a clue?
Or did it just muddy the waters? Did it lead everyone down a rabbit hole?
Right. Or did it actually serve to confuse the pursuit of truth, maybe steering investigators way off course when the real answer might have been much, much closer to home all along?
It's a tough question and one we'll try to unpack.
Okay, let's start by grounding ourselves in the specifics. Let's talk about Tara herself and the day she vanished.
Right. So to really understand the intensity that followed, you need to know a bit about Tara Calico. She was 19, living in Belen, New Mexico, very active, smart. She was a student at the University of New Mexico.
She sounds like she had her life together.
Exactly. She wasn't impulsive. She had routines. She was disciplined. And that's key because her disappearance immediately screamed foul play. Just vanishing like that. It was completely out of character for her.
And her routine, it wasn't just vague, was it? It was pretty specific.
Oh, very specific. On Tuesday, September 20th, 1988, around 11:45 in the morning, she headed out for her regular bike ride, a 36-mile loop.
Wow, 36 miles. That's serious.
It was. And the route took her along New Mexico State Road 47 in Valencia County. It's a fairly open, kind of isolated stretch of road.
Okay.
And she was riding something very noticeable. Her mother's bike. A neon pink, Huffy mountain bike.
Neon pink. You wouldn't miss that.
You really wouldn't. And that bike, well, it's almost as crucial to the story as the Polaroid in some ways. Because it was bright, distinctive, and vanished completely.
Just like Tara.
That absence is chilling in itself.
And there was already this sense of unease hanging over that route. Tara's mother, Patty Dole, she had actually stopped riding with Tara on that specific path.
Really?
Patty said she felt uncomfortable. She felt like she was being stalked by a motorist. That's the quote. She was worried enough that she actually told Tara she should carry mace.
Did Tara take her advice?
No, apparently Tara declined. Maybe thought her mom was being a bit overly cautious,
Oh, wow.
But that feeling her mother had, that premonition of danger on that road, it just adds this heavy emotional weight to everything that happened next. Absolutely heart-wrenching knowing that. So let's look at the actual evidence found along the route that day, because it immediately suggested something violent happened, right?
It did. Search teams found pieces, fragments of her Sony Walkman, and a cassette tape she liked. It was a mix, Boston and Tesla, I think.
Okay.
Scattered along the highway near mile marker 26.
Just scattered.
Yeah. And Patty Dole, Tara's mother, she seized on that immediately. She became convinced, and this really became central to her whole search for years, that Tara hadn't just dropped them by accident.
She thought Tara did it deliberately.
Yes. She believed Tara broke them and scattered them as she was being taken, like breadcrumbs, markers to help guide anyone looking for her.
Wow, trying to leave a trail.
If you connect that idea back to the witness sightings of a truck, well, it paints a pretty harrowing picture. Tara may be being pursued, managing to break off pieces of her belongings before she was completely overpowered.
That's a chilling thought, but it seems plausible, especially given other evidence.
Right, there was more. Investigators found bicycle tire tracks, distinctive ones. They seemed to stop abruptly, skid off the pavement.
Like she was forced off the road.
Potentially. And right near those bike tracks, fresh vehicle tire tracks, suggesting a vehicle stopped right there, maybe pulled alongside her. It points to a rapid, probably violent stop and capture.
And this ties into what witnesses saw.
It correlates directly. Several people who were on State Road 47 that day reported seeing a light-colored pickup truck.
Any specifics on the truck?
Descriptions varied slightly, but often it was described as maybe a late 1950s Ford, possibly a 1953 model, and it had a camper shell.
A 53 Ford pickup with a camper shell. That's pretty specific.
It is. And crucially, witnesses said this truck was following Tara closely. Not just passing, but following. Tailgating her almost.
Suggesting they were watching her or actively pursuing her.
Exactly. Which places the crime, at least initially, very firmly and locally, right there in Valencia County, New Mexico.
Okay, so if we just look at the evidence trail up to this point, you've got the specific time, 11:45 a.m., the specific location, State Road 47, specific evidence fragments, the Walkman, the tape, and specific vehicle sightings, that light pickup. Everything seems to point towards an immediate local crime, probably committed by someone who either knew her routine or was just, watching that road for an opportunity.
Absolutely. Which brings us back to that neon pink Huffy bike. The single most critical piece of physical evidence that was never recovered.
Still missing to this day.
Still missing. Think about it. If she'd been accidentally hit by a car, the bike would likely still be there, damaged.
Wow.
If she'd simply abandoned it for some reason, someone would have found it eventually.
Right. A bright pink bike doesn't just disappear.
Exactly. The fact that the bike vanished along with Tara, along with only those small personal items left behind, it strongly suggests a deliberate cleanup, a disposal operation.
So premeditated, or at least a very successful immediate cover-up.
That's what the lack of the bike implies. Right there in New Mexico, right from the start. Foul play and an effort to hide it.
So for the first 9 months, the investigation was focused there in New Mexico, searching the area, talking to locals, looking for that truck.
Correct. They searched arroyos, interviewed local truckers, followed up leads about that light-colored pickup. The focus was entirely local.
And then suddenly, summer of 1989, everything just shifts. Geographically, emotionally. The case explodes onto the national stage. Hashtag, tag 2. The Polaroid phenomenon. The national focus. Yeah, this is the part of the story everyone remembers. This shift takes us, 1,500 miles away?
Roughly, yeah. 1,500 miles away to Port St. Joe, Florida. On June 15th, 1989, 9 months after Tara vanished, this truly shocking photograph is found.
Where exactly?
In the parking lot of a convenience store. A foodway store, specifically.
And the circumstances of the discovery. They're really bizarre, aren't they? Almost too cinematic.
They really are. It wasn't just found lying there randomly. The story goes, a woman found it on the pavement, right in the parking space that a vehicle had just pulled out of.
And she saw the vehicle.
She did. She described it as a white, windowless Toyota cargo van, and she saw it speeding away. The driver, she said, was a man with a mustache, maybe mid-30s or 40s.
Wow. So the immediate thought is either it was dropped accidentally by the people involved or maybe dropped deliberately, like to taunt or maybe even send a message.
Exactly. That ambiguity was there from the very start. Was it carelessness or calculation? We still don't really know.
And the image itself, let's describe it again. A young woman, sort of partly obscured by maybe a pillow or something, and a young boy next to her, both gagged with black duct tape, both look bound. And they're in the dark interior of what looks like that van.
And the fear in their eyes.
Yeah.
It's just palpable, even in a slightly blurry old Polaroid. It's incredibly disturbing.
So the identification process kicks off almost immediately. And this is where things get really complicated and where maybe the investigation started to get stuck.
I think that's a fair way to put it. You could call it investigative inertia. It becomes very hard to pivot away once such a sensational clue emerges. Tara's mother, Patty Dole, was shown the photo.
And her reaction.
She was, quote, convinced, absolutely convinced the young woman in the photo was Tara.
And it wasn't just a general resemblance, right? She pointed to something specific.
Exactly. Patty claimed the young woman in the Polaroid had a very specific scar on her leg. A scar identical to one Tara had gotten in a childhood accident.
Okay, that's a significant detail.
For Patty, it was everything. It wasn't just speculation. She saw it as definitive proof. Proof that Tara was alive but in terrible danger and somehow ended up all the way down in Florida.
And her conviction must have carried enormous weight.
Oh, absolutely. A mother's certainty in a case like this. It instantly redirected the focus, not just for the public and the media, but for parts of the investigation too.
Yeah.
The national spotlight swung towards Florida.
But the photo showed two people. What about the boy?
Right, that complicated things further. Initially, there was a lot of intense speculation. Could the boy be Michael Henley? He was a 9-year-old boy who had also gone missing from New Mexico, actually not far from where Tara lived, in April 1988, a few months before Tara disappeared.
So the idea was maybe they were taken by the same person. Two missing kids from New Mexico turning up in a photo in Florida.
Exactly. That possibility was explosive. It fueled this narrative of maybe a sophisticated traveling predator or ring.
But that theory didn't hold up, did it?
No, it didn't. Though it took some time for the information to filter through public perception. Michael Henley's remains were sadly found in 1990.
Where?
Up in the Zuni Mountains in New Mexico. Quite a ways from where he disappeared, but still in New Mexico. His death was ruled unrelated to Tara's case and definitely unrelated to the boy in the Polaroid.
So finding Michael's remains locally should have, theoretically, weakened the link between the Polaroid and Tara, right? If one person in the photo wasn't Michael, maybe the other wasn't Tara.
Logically, yes. It should have cast doubt on the photo's relevance to the New Mexico cases, but the image, it had already taken root. It was too powerful, too compelling. Patty Dole's conviction remained unshaken.
And what about forensic analysis of the photo, trying to definitively ID the girl as Tara? That must have been crucial.
It was crucial, and it became a major point of contention. This really highlights the difficulty of relying on photographic evidence, especially older photos. There was just no consensus among the experts.
Different agencies came to different conclusions.
Completely different. Scotland Yard, believe it or not, got involved. They used techniques like photoanthropometry, basically measuring facial features and proportions in the photo.
And their conclusion?
They believed the girl was Tara Calico.
Okay, so that supports Patty's belief.
It did. But then you had Los Alamos National Laboratory, right there in New Mexico, a place with incredible resources. They often help with complex ID cases.
And they disagreed.
They disagreed with Scotland Yard's assessment. They did not believe it was Tara.
So, two major analyses, two opposite results. What about the FBI?
The FBI was tasked with making the official determination for the U.S. investigation. And initially, they were inconclusive.
Inconclusive? That doesn't really help anyone, does it?
It really doesn't. In fact, that initial ambiguity from the FBI was perhaps quite damaging to the local New Mexico investigation. It essentially gave official credence to the Florida sighting, even if it wasn't confirmed.
Because if the FBI couldn't rule it out.
Exactly. It meant official resources, manpower, time, money, media focus kept getting pulled towards this unconfirmed lead 1,500 miles away. The public just saw different respected agencies disagreeing about the single most dramatic piece of evidence. It fueled decades of speculation and debate.
And it allowed that narrative, Tara abducted, taken far away, to really overshadow the theory of a local crime happening right there on Highway 47.
Absolutely. The power of that single haunting image just can't be overstated. It kept Tara's face, or what people believed was her face, in the public eye. It was on posters, milk cartons back then, discussed endlessly on shows like Unsolved Mysteries.
But eventually, the FBI did reach a more definitive conclusion.
Yes, years later, after further analysis and perhaps advancements in technology or methodology, the FBI officially determined that the young woman in the Polaroid was not Tara Calico.
Not Tara Calico. That's a major finding.
It's huge. But by the time that official determination came down, the Polaroid had achieved this kind of cultural permanence. For millions of people, that photo was the Tara Calico case. It was seared into public memory.
And tragically, Patty Dole, Tara's mother, she held on to her belief, didn't she?
She did. She maintained her profound conviction that the girl was Tara, relying on that image as a symbol of hope, however agonizing, that her daughter might still be alive somewhere. She held on to that belief until she passed away in 2006.
That's incredibly sad. So we're left with this profound tension. On one hand, you have a local crime strongly suggested by the initial evidence in New Mexico, the witnesses, the Walkman, the bike tracks, the missing bike.
Right.
And on the other hand, you have this powerful nationwide abduction narrative fueled for decades by this ambiguous, ultimately misidentified photograph found in Florida.
And that tension really defines the competing narratives that have shaped this case for over 30 years. #3, competing narratives and cultural legacy, theories and interpretations. So let's talk about that local crime theory again. It's always been there, simmering beneath the surface. And crucially, it's the theory that local law enforcement in Valencia County seems to have consistently favored.
Their focus stayed local despite the Florida photo.
Largely, yes. The core idea was that Tara was abducted, or possibly even killed, very quickly, right there on State Road 47, probably by local individuals.
Wow.
And the Florida photo, well, it was either a bizarre, unrelated coincidence, or maybe even a deliberate distraction.
Okay. And this local theory got a huge boost years later, didn't it, from a former sheriff?
It did. In 2008, Rene Rivera, who had been the Valencia County Sheriff during the time of the disappearance, spoke out publicly. He made some pretty startling claims.
What did he allege specifically? Because this touches on that idea of maybe a cover-up involving influential people.
Exactly. Rivera claimed he knew who was responsible. He alleged it was a group of local young men, teenagers at the time, who were known to cause trouble.
Okay. And what did he think happened?
His theory involved either an accidental hit and run while they were maybe harassing her, or some kind of confrontation that went terribly wrong, leading to her death. Then panic set in.
And the cover-up part.
Rivera alleged that their parents, and he described these families as being prominent or somehow influential within Valencia County, stepped in to help cover it up. He suggested they were instrumental in moving Tara's body, and maybe the bike, disposing of them somewhere remote.
That idea of a local cover-up, aided by connected families, it's a really dark element, but you hear variations of it in other small-town cold cases, don't you?
You do. In a close-knit community like Belen was, especially back then, if people perceive certain families as having pull or connections to local authorities or politics, it could absolutely stifle an investigation. Whispers, reluctance to come forward.
Yeah, people might be afraid to speak up.
Right. If local officers were trying to investigate honestly, but maybe higher-ups were subtly discouraging certain leads or resources were mysteriously unavailable, it could explain why things stalled for so long, even if some people suspected the truth.
And this local homicide theory wasn't just Rivera's opinion years later, right? There was some official weight behind it earlier.
There was. Even before Rivera went public in 2008, something significant happened legally. Back in 1998, 10 years after she vanished, a judge officially declared Tara Calico deceased.
Legally dead.
Yes. And crucially, the ruling declared her death a homicide. So the courts officially supported the theory that she met a violent end, likely near where she disappeared on State Road 47. That legal declaration implicitly refutes the whole far-flung abduction scenario suggested by the Polaroid.
And local law enforcement, particularly in Valencia County, they've pretty consistently held that belief, haven't they? Their search efforts remained focused there.
They have. They've always maintained, often quite strongly, that the answer lies locally. They believe Tara's remains are buried somewhere in the vast, rugged landscape of Valencia County, hidden by people who knew the area intimately.
It's fascinating, though, how the case managed to sustain public interest for so long with these completely conflicting narratives running in parallel.
I think that's precisely why it sustained such enduring fascination. The Tara Calico case hits this strange intersection. You have the absolute horror of a young woman vanishing without a trace, combined with this tangible, physical piece of evidence, the Polaroid, that's both incredibly compelling and impossibly ambiguous.
It blurs the lines.
Completely. It blurs the line between forensic fact, witness accounts, official rulings, and a mother's powerful, unwavering instinct.
And looking back at the cultural impact, the Polaroid was really something else, especially for its time.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it, that this was before the internet as we know it, before social media, before Reddit deep dives and TikTok detectives. The Polaroid became this early potent symbol of a viral mystery.
A tangible object that went viral.
Exactly. It was a physical photograph that achieved a kind of mass awareness and reproduction, usually reserved for news headlines or later digital content. It was like the original true crime meme decades before the term existed.
Wow, never thought of it that way.
That shocking image, the bound girl, the gag, the fear in her eyes looking right at the camera, it just fueled decades of public intrigue. And later, when the internet did arrive, it became a focal point for endless online discussions, debates about its authenticity, who took it, why were there other photos.
So, in a way, the photograph became the public's main tool for investigating, didn't it? It focused millions of eyes on Florida, even while local police were still digging around in New Mexico.
That's a crucial point. You could see it as a prime example of investigative resource misallocation, driven almost entirely by media frenzy and the power of that single image.
It created this paradox.
Exactly. It's the paradox of sensationalism in cold cases.
Yeah.
The photo generated unprecedented public interest, which is generally good, right? Keeps the case from being forgotten.
Sure.
But by riveting everyone's attention on this geographically distant, potentially completely misleading clue, it arguably diverted emotional energy, public pressure, maybe even critical investigative resources away from the less dramatic, more complex local investigation happening back in New Mexico.
The ambiguity was key.
It was. The sheer uncertainty surrounding the Polaroid allowed both narratives to survive side by side for decades. The hope narrative, fueled by Patty Dole, maybe she's alive somewhere, and the local crime narrative, favored by police. It happened here, and it was covered up. Hashtag tag 4000A. Recent developments and analysis. Takeaway.
Okay, so the case might be defined by decades of this confusion and competing theories, but things haven't just stood still. We need to bring everyone up to speed on some really substantial, actual police work that's happened much more recently.
That's right. The Valencia County Sheriff's Office, working with the FBI, seems to have made significant progress, particularly in the 2020s, and their focus appears firmly rooted back in that local crime theory.
There was some major action taken, wasn't there? A search warrant.
Yes, in late 2021, investigators executed a sealed search warrant at a specific home, a local residence there in Valencia County.
Sealed, meaning the details weren't public.
Correct. But the action itself was significant. It signaled that authorities were zeroing in, focusing very heavily on specific local individuals and possibly specific locations, long rumored to be connected to that local foul play narrative. This wasn't just a random search. It felt targeted, based on new or reevaluated intelligence.
And this renewed local focus culminated in a pretty major announcement more recently.
It did. In June of 2023, authorities made a significant public statement. They announced that they believe they have now identified the offenders involved in Tara's disappearance.
Identified the offenders after all this time.
That's what they stated. And furthermore, they said they believe they now possess enough evidence to actually submit the case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges.
Wow. For a case that's been cold for 35 years, that sounds like a massive breakthrough. The closest it's ever been to a real resolution.
It absolutely is. However, this is where the harsh realities and legal challenges of prosecuting such an old case really come into sharp focus. You have to keep this challenge front and center.
What's the main hurdle?
Even if they have identified suspects, even if they have, say, new witness testimony or maybe even confessions, the single biggest difficulty in bringing this case to trial remains the fact that Tara's body has never been found.
Right. The lack of a body. That's the ultimate roadblock in so many cold cases, isn't it?
It's huge. Without recovering Tara's remains, securing a conviction is exponentially more difficult. Prosecutors face the challenge of proving corpus delicti, basically, proving that a crime actually occurred and that the victim is truly deceased as a result of that crime.
You can prosecute a murder without a body, but it's incredibly tough.
Exactly. The defense can always argue, well, without the body, how can you be sure she didn't just run away, start a new life, or die somewhere else from unrelated causes? It introduces reasonable doubt.
And time itself works against the prosecution too, right? Evidence degrades.
Absolutely. Compounding the no-body problem is the issue of forensic evidence from the original 1988 investigation. DNA analysis was in its infancy then. The collection methods, the preservation techniques, they just weren't what they are today.
So potentially crucial trace evidence might have been lost or wasn't collected properly back then?
It's highly likely. Evidence you don't collect or preserve correctly in 1988 can't suddenly materialize to save your case in 2024.
Right.
And that lack of definitive physical evidence, combined with the missing body, makes the district attorney's job incredibly challenging.
Which probably explains why, even after that 2023 announcement.
Right. Even though they announced they'd identified offenders, as of early 2024, no names have been publicly released, and no formal arrests have been made in connection with Tara's disappearance itself. It underscores just how difficult it is to translate "we think we know who did it" into actual criminal charges that can stick in court after nearly 4 decades.
So it really forces us to circle back to that central irony, doesn't it? The Polaroid. If the recent progress is all based on the local theory, what does that say about the legacy of that photograph?
It's such an incredible paradox.
Yeah.
And it really speaks volumes about how cold cases sometimes evolve. By all official accounts now, the Polaroid was a forensic red herring. It wasn't Tara. Yet it was undeniably the single thing that kept Tara Calico's story from fading away. It kept her name and face, or the face believed to be hers, alive nationally for decades.
So it generated pressure, public interest.
Immense pressure,
Yeah.
intense national media attention. It arguably forced investigators, including the FBI, to keep the case file open, to keep assigning resources, when it might otherwise have languished completely in a local sheriff's office filing cabinet.
But at the same time,
As we discussed, it diverted potentially huge amounts of institutional focus, FBI time, forensic lab work, public speculation away from the local crime theory that authorities now seem convinced holds the actual key to solving the case.
so it both helped and hindered massively in completely opposite ways.
Precisely. It's a defining characteristic of this case.
When you think about it, Tara Calico's story is such a tragedy, but it's also defined by this incredible perseverance. You mentioned her mother, Patty Dole, who just never, ever gave up hope or stopped searching.
Her dedication was extraordinary.
And also the perseverance, maybe quieter, of the local community members who held on to suspicions, and the local law enforcement who, despite the national distraction, kept coming back to their own backyard.
Which leads us to a really provocative question, I think, for you listening to consider. If this case is finally truly solved, if charges are brought and justice is served based on a local theory, how will we view the role of that Polaroid?
Yeah.
Will the resolution be seen as something that happened because the Polaroid kept the case alive for so long? Or will it be seen as a victory achieved in spite of the decades of distraction and misdirection that famous haunting image ultimately caused?
That's a tough one. The path to truth is rarely straightforward, is it?
Almost never, especially in cases this old and complex. Powerful reminder, really, about the nature of evidence in cold cases. How a single image, a single clue can offer this glimmer of hope, but also sow decades and decades of confusion.
Absolutely. And while Tara Calico's story remains officially unsolved at this moment, it's clear the pursuit of justice for her and for her family continues with renewed determination. Next time on Threads of Truth, we unpack the chilling 1981 disappearance of Cynthia Anderson, a legal secretary who vanished from her locked office, leaving behind cryptic signs and a mystery that still baffles investigators.